Less than 2 years into his political career, JD Vance will soon be next in line to the most powerful position in the world. And at just 40 years old, Vance will be the youngest person in decades to be vice president, ushering a new generation of the MAGA era. As Donald Trump Jr. put it to the New York Times, quote, "What we have in JD is we now have an America First bench. We now have people who can carry that torch, people unafraid to stand up to the tyranny of our government and fight." I want to bring in NBC's Dasha Burns from West Palm Beach, Florida. Mark Short is also back with us. So, Dasha, has Trump chosen, I think, in his one-time opponent, now his natural successor, certainly at least temperamentally?
Yeah, he does, Chris, seem to be the heir apparent to the MAGA movement. That's especially true if you listen to Don Jr. or Eric Trump. Those are two figures, Trump's sons, who pushed very hard for Vance to be his vice presidential nominee. And that was controversial. Not a lot of Republicans were on board with that initially. He had a lot of baggage carried with him. I mean, he has said some very, very critical things of the former president in the past, but they actually felt like that was a strength, not a detriment for him, because so many Americans have felt distrustful of the former president or didn't like the former president, now president-elect. But he could sort of explaining his transition to being a staunch Trump supporter, maybe bring some people along with them. And look, when you look at the demographics that turned out for the former president, you look at especially young men. That was a clear strategy in picking Vance as well. Try to bring some of those younger right-leaning men and have that 40-year-old, that younger generation as a complement to former President Trump. And when you think about how, we talked a lot about how bro-y, right, this campaign was. I mean, JD Vance was a big part of that. Think about his past comments about women, childless cat ladies. Think about how he played the big role of leaning into this unfounded conspiracy theory about migrants eating cats and dogs. He was a firebrand, and he is a firebrand. That's something the former president really likes, that he doesn't back down. Is very much in line with how Trump operates, with how his movement operates, and now he is the one sort of carrying the torch. Now, it doesn't mean he's necessarily a shoo-in for the next Republican nominee for president, but he certainly is part of that next generation, Chris.
Dasha, thank you. And I think we can all say that whoever you are in that position, 4 years is a long time to either make your profile better or make it worse. It's tough, right? I mean, if you look at the history of vice presidents, part of the problem a lot of people see for Kamala Harris was that much of America didn't know her. First of all, do you think that'll be a problem for JD Vance? You never want to outshine Donald Trump or your boss, who's the president anyway. What are the pros and cons for JD Vance as the number two?
Well, I think that obviously he was an asset to the president on this campaign. I think he is a fierce surrogate for him. I think that he was on the ticket for, I think most people view as a remarkable sweeping victory. I think obviously the coordination of who will be next is a little bit early, because you're probably going to have a pretty turbulent 4 years, and there's going to be a lot of challenges presented to you in the course of those 4 years. And I think as well, Chris, that it's significant as a comeback as it is for Donald Trump. I think if you look at some of the numbers, I think sometimes we overanalyze this. And I think his favorable, unfavorable is still 44-54, which in some ways makes the victory even more astonishing that it was so broad when his unfavorables is a -10. And I think it's really far more a repudiation of the last 4 years by the American people. And so to suggest as to who's going to set up a coordination 4 years from now, I think is really premature.
Yeah, you make a really good point. Fewer people voted this year than voted 4 years ago, and you do wonder if there were two candidates that people actually liked and felt excited to vote for, if those numbers might have been bigger. Time will tell, but we have 4 years to take a breath. Mark Short, it's always good to talk to you. Thanks so much.